Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 25. In this chapter, Jane is struggling to decide whether or not she wants to continue with her schooling and leave her brand new baby by himself. And Michael is trying to be tougher and more masculine. Bruh, that's not what anybody wants from you. I don't know how to tell you this. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very, very much to Claire for commissioning this episode. Claire, if you are out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so excited about this season, you guys, because I just realized... Let me adjust my mic here for a second. Forgive me, everybody. At the end of the last season, the stealing of the baby... You know, I was sort of like, is this going to be a whole thing next season? And it's resolved very quickly, and I was relieved by that. So already we've got something that didn't go the way I was thinking, and I was pleased. But then you throw in Petra and the sperm sample. And I was over here going, she wouldn't. Like, she wouldn't, right? She's just not going to, she won't do that. That's crazy. What could she possibly hope to gain? How could this work out for her? And the showrunners are just like, no, yeah, we're doing that. Meanwhile, I'm over here going what is she going to go get a turkey baster? And they're like, yes. And we're going to make jokes about that. Thanksgiving jokes with a turkey baster. And I just have sort of had to kind of come to a realization with this show that I had to have with One Piece. And that may seem like an odd show to compare this to, but they similarly are off the wall and have people doing shit that you're just like, wait, what? If you enjoy the over the top, soap opera style of Jane the Virgin, and you are looking for something else incredibly over the top, very different way. If you like that vibe, I really am going to go ahead and suggest One Piece with total sincerity, because you just have to go, I guess we're doing this, over and over again as you're watching it, and be like, well, I didn't think but it's happening. Oh, it's already happened. Oh, okay. And I keep getting caught off guard with how quickly this is paced as well. So, she's pregnant. And I'm thinking, oh, wait until he finds out, which I'm assuming mid-season at the earliest. Third episode, not only has he found out in the previous episode, but third episode, we've already got Jane in the mix knowing this as well. And a confirmation that she is in fact pregnant from another doctor. I never thought we would be here already. This is happening so fast. Now, you guys, I'm going to go character by character as I usually do, but I'm not going to start at the beginning. I am going to start instead with a discussion about the options that Petra tells Jane and Rafael that they have. She gives them 3. 1, abortion. 2, oligarch. Basically, she's like, I'll find somebody rich, seduce them, and then tell them that this is their baby. And 3, I stay and have the baby, and you guys are part of the baby's life and raising him. Or her. Whatever this baby turns out to be. And, of course, understandably, Shamara is like, she should have an abortion. And I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't love the concept of her having an abortion for the wrong reasons. It's not about like, I am, you guys know I'm totally pro-choice and abortions are totally legit and necessary. But I had a weird sort of like, oh, that's his only other sample. And he's got this one chance to have another kid. Does he want to like just not do that? It was so unlikely that both of these samples would take. And maybe just want to have this other kid too, which isn't really like the right attitude, frankly. So that's on me. The oligarch thing. My instinct there is to be like, go with that one. Because she gets to still have the child. She gets to have a rich spouse that's distracting her from being in their lives, which I think is all to the good. But my issue is, does the oligarch necessarily deserve to be lied to about whether this is their child or not? Like that's the thing that I kept getting hung up on is I am going to assume an oligarch is probably a mostly bad person and that's why they're an oligarch. So probably they deserve it. But I don't love the idea of like setting somebody up that way, And also you can keep that kind of lie going. Plenty of people have children that their spouse thinks is theirs and is not. Like that happens shockingly frequently. So it's not even necessarily a guarantee that it would come out eventually. But I'm going to go ahead and say if you're with somebody that's higher income, it's more likely to get caught out than otherwise. Because of the access to like medical help that they would have that lower income people don't have, there would probably be some sort of occasion where, something about their blood type or a congenital condition, something would shake out, So the final one, I have the baby and stay in your lives. You guys, I know and I knew when she presented these that this, of course, was going to be the option that Jane and Rafael went with. And I respect the fact that this is Rafael's sperm and this is his ex-wife and it's not the sort of thing that you can just turn your back on. But I definitely was like, why don't you have a fourth option where you have the baby and just go fucking live your life and deal with your mistake? And I know that's like wrong and unfair. One, it's not fair to the kid. Like the only reason that I would support an abortion here is A, the simplicity of it, and B, because no child needs to be raised by a woman like Petra. I mean, can you imagine oh my God. So her going off and raising the kid by herself is not going to be good for the child. I don't see her being a good parent. Secondly, I know that even if she were to go off by herself, that's not going to be the last we've seen of her because she is just impossible to get rid of. She's still in love with Rafael, apparently, which I don't see. It's so weird, you guys. I will say that I have thus far enjoyed like the romantic aspects of the show, and it's not like that doesn't work for me, but I am just so not into Rafael except for in tiny little bursts here and there, a certain line or a certain smile, and then I'll kind of be like, oh, there it is. But I just don't really like, I don't find him attractive personally, except for, like I said, in certain moments. He's just so incredibly like polished and overdone, and he is not my type, and his personality is kind of whatever. I don't feel like if I am going to be, doing something for writing a story, one of the best things to do to understand your characters is one of those questionnaires, and it's not like where are they from or who are their parents or whatever, but asking things like, if they wake up in the morning and it's cold and they want a hot drink, what kind of drink are they going to get? Or do they ever want a hot drink? Do they just drink soda in the morning? Do they like coffee? That kind of thing. And I feel like I know about Jane, but I don't really have any idea on the answers for some things with Rafael. I feel like I've gotten to know him in a weirdly roundabout way that doesn't make me feel close to him as a character. I feel like I know Michael better. So, all this to say, the chemistry between him and Petra and the idea that she's still in love with him, I'm going to be real with y'all, I don't really buy it. It's not like I don't buy it for the story itself. I understand that this is a legit thing that's meant to be happening in the story. But I don't feel the pull from her when she sees him. It all seems like a bit of an afterthought. And there hasn't been the acting. I don't know if maybe that's where it's missing for me. Like the moments where he's been sort of tricking her into thinking that he still cares about her, it's done well. Like you can see why she believes that she still maybe has him on the run a little bit. But you know what I mean? There are just certain actors who have a type of chemistry that every time they're on screen together, you're just kind of squeeing a little bit. And that usually happens, that squeeing, because they're not really allowed to be together and they both seem so perfect for one another. And the difficulty in a story like this with making that happen is that every character, except for Jane in many ways, has done some kind of despicable stuff that makes you go, with the squeeing. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm ever going to be feeling that again with Rafael or Michael in regard to anybody else, because I just have so much baggage with the both of them. And Petra is so terrible. The squee has to come from a place of like, oh, I wish you two would kind of figure it out and get together, because I want to see that happen. And I had it to a bit of a degree with Rafael and Jane, but only in as much as I wanted Jane away from Michael. I was really pissed at him. And it wasn't ever that strong with Rafael. It was just more like, well, if this is what it takes to get her to walk away from a guy who really isn't there for her the way he should be, then fine. I can't root for Petra because she's a maniac. And I can't root for Rafael because, frankly, I just don't really like him. And so I'm in this weird place where I'm accepting the fact that Petra's in love with him. I'm accepting that she's like doing things in the hopes of sort of getting his attention back on her. And I believe that I am supposed to be going, uh-oh, she's going to interfere with Jane. But I don't care if she interferes with Jane because I don't like Rafael enough to give a shit if he is with her or with Jane. I'm not over here gunning for Jane and Rafael to make it work. So I don't feel the sense of threat to their relationship because I just feel like he's not great. And whoever winds up with him isn't going to be winning anything. And I know that's kind of brutal, but that's where I'm at. So the whole thing with her like being into him and wanting to stick around and being excited that they decide that they're going to try and work with her on it, I am supposed to feel like a sense of dread, I think, about what it is she's going to get up to. But more, I feel just sort of all right, well, let's see what she does. And it's not giving me what I want it to give. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm using a lot of words to explain why this particular storyline isn't grabbing me that much. I appreciate that it's moving quickly. That's the one main thing, because I don't feel that invested overall. At least it doesn't feel like it's dragging. So that's something. But overall, like, you know, she has this conversation with Jane and Rafael, and I love when she's like explaining to Rafael while they're in the doctor's office what she thought, that like, your sister told me that you still had feelings for me, so I thought that I could seduce you and then surprise, tell you about the baby and blah, blah, blah. And I love that, like, they're having to rush all of this, as Jane calls. So, of course, you know, Jane asks him if he's still okay with Michael being the baby's godfather. And he says yes without even thinking twice, despite the fact that his request that Michael be the godfather was obviously made in a moment of real, like, heated emotion because they had just gotten Mateo back. So, Stacy says it's probably better she stays in Miami. At least they know where she is and don't have to wait for her to pop up unexpectedly. That's true. For me, it's more about the direct threat to Jane. She might get hurt separate from whether she and Rafael get together. Yeah, I guess that's like the main issue is, and I think you're right to point this out, Stacy, that like whether or not Jane is even romantically that invested in Rafael, the fact that Petra sees Jane as being in her way just makes Jane a target, and she doesn't deserve it. And that's what it comes down to, is just how often Jane winds up being an obstacle that Petra feels she has to get past, and she's just a fucking, like, you know, collateral damage. So that I can understand. But I just wish that I was more invested either way with the relationship, because being worried about Jane and what could happen to her is extremely vague, and it's not quite enough to get me like wholly invested in one direction or another, because I don't really know at this point what's going to happen. So it's a nebulous sort of threat, which leaves me in a place of kind of not wanting to choose one way or the other how I feel, and just sort of sitting on the sidelines waiting. I would like to feel more involved, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, so, and the reason that like Jane ultimately decides to come to this conclusion is because she gets a message from Michael in his diary, which he keeps protesting is not a diary. But Michael in this episode, it's such a weird thing. He gets this advice from Rogelio that when he laid down the law last episode, he's talking to Rogelio and saying, like, I came to apologize to Jane because I feel like I was a little harsh. And Rogelio interrupts and is like, no, I overheard her talking to her mom, and she said that you had this like really confident attitude that was kind of sexy. And this is such a great example of dudes not understanding the difference between toxic masculinity and actual masculinity. People hear the term toxic masculinity and they think that it is people calling masculinity toxic. That is not what it is. For anybody listening who thinks that's what that means, it is not that. Masculinity is not toxic. It is what we have decided is masculine that is toxic. Like, we have assigned certain things and been like, oh, that's macho. That's a man acting like a man. And they're actually just really bad behaviors that are damaging. And we have this mistaken idea that that's what it means. And it's like, masculinity is not inherently toxic. Just as femininity. Like, there can be toxic femininity as well. That's a thing. Femininity is not inherently toxic either. It just is what it is. So what Rogelio is not getting, Jane is saying to her mom, like, he was really confident and it was kind of sexy. And, you know, as a woman who struggles with this, like, I am definitely somebody who likes men who are... Take charge feels too strong because that's not exactly true, but I like men who are competent, reliable, good communicators, direct, you know, that kind of thing. And her saying, like, he came at her with this sort of confident attitude that she wasn't expecting, I can understand her reaction, because Michael can be, I won't say that he's like overly emotional, because that's not true, but he does tend to sort of like be a little bit passive sometimes. So he's switching it up by being like, I am going to draw a bit of a line in the sand here, which when a person seems to not really be willing to like fight and take a stand, it's very attractive to see them suddenly care about something enough that they're going to like really lay down the law and say, this is what I am feeling and this is what I want. And I experience this, like, for me, I respond to people's passion. I really love when people seem to care genuinely and strongly about something, even if it's a topic that I don't personally really relate to very much. And it was something that I struggled with my ex-husband, was that he didn't seem very passionate about many things. And when it came time where we were like talking about splitting up, it felt like he didn't fight for me. It felt like he was just sort of going to sit and wait to see what I decided and whether we were going to, like, it was completely in my hands what happened in our relationship. And I didn't like that feeling, because it felt like I was alone and it was all on me. And that's not what I want in what's supposed to be a partnership. So Jane feeling this way about Michael really tracks with the way their relationship has seemed to go, and the fact that occasionally Jane needs somebody to kind of like take her by the hand and be like, okay, look, stop obsessing. This is what we're doing. Like, not that she isn't good at making decisions, but it can get very tiring to be the one that's like handling things all the time. And Rogelio, unfortunately, hears her saying that this like thing with him being confident is sexy, and is like, oh, well, what she means is that she wants him to be emotionally distant and removed, and to, as he puts it, like not give in to any wussy stuff. Now, he's giving Michael this advice because Michael is coming to apologize for Jane for maybe being a little harsh. And he's like, she liked it, so you don't have to apologize. Don't do it. It's going to undermine the whole thing. And he may be right. However, there's a part of me that's like wishing I got to see the scene, or you know what I mean? Because I want to see him apologize. And if Jane did respond well to it, what would she say? I feel like Jane would be like, actually, it's okay. I appreciated you just saying how you felt, you know? I feel like Jane and Michael communicate very honestly with each other most of the time, and that's like the biggest advantage that they have as a couple. So Rogelio is just like, first of all, doing that thing that so many dudes do where they're like, well, apologizing means you're a coward or that you're whipped, which is just so untrue. You can have been in the right and still need to apologize. Just like News at 11, being in the right about a thing doesn't mean that you get to say whatever the fuck you want to anybody. Like, sometimes you can still take shit too far. And the idea that he's like, take any wussy thoughts you have and write them down. We find out how that went for Rogelio, and I'll say it didn't seem to ultimately help so much in his relationship. So I don't know. But Michael decides to take this to heart. So we see him a couple times interacting with Jane, and she's clearly like having some strong emotional reactions that she's sharing with him, and he's not giving her anything back. He's just telling her, take care, or that sounds tricky, I'm sure you'll figure it out, in these extremely, it's moments that really do remind me of my dad, to be honest. Like, we know that Michael is very, very invested in whether Jane is okay. He cares about her a lot and wants to be there and has things he wants to say to her. But the energy that he is giving off here is one of like almost disinterest. You know, like he was half listening and sort of tuned in at the end, realized that she was upset, and then just said, "Oh, I'm sure it'll work out," in the vaguest way that indicates that he didn't even really fully hear what the problem was. So eventually, I love this. She's having the like christening party at her house, and he says he dropped something off for her and it's in her bedroom. And as he's leaving and seeming really weird, she mentions to Rogelio that he has been distant, and Rogelio explains. And she chases after him and is like, he just told me, you can't have thought that I would respond well to that, right? And it turns out that Michael had indeed realized that she wouldn't respond well and given it up already. And I really, really like this as a sort of like a plot point, instead of it just being that he gets outed for doing this sort of silly thing, because I feel like a lesser show would have been like, oh, he did the wrong thing, but he did it for the right reasons. He distanced himself too much, but it was because he thought that was what Jane liked. And so isn't it sweet that he tried to do something that she would enjoy or approve of? A lot of shows would play it that way and just sort of leave it there. But what I really liked about this is that it's not simply, oh, it's cute that he did this thing. What it is that warms your heart about it is that ultimately he knows Jane well enough to realize, hold on, come on, this isn't her. She wouldn't like this. I'm being dishonest about how I'm feeling, actually. And that's not what it's about between the two of us. And I don't want to keep doing this. And I'm sure she doesn't like it. And that's real intimacy and connection between people. And that is something that I think is missing from so many romances out there, is that people just have this like strong physical attraction and then they joke around or have some similar interest here and there. And that's meant to be a relationship. But what it really is about, when you truly care about somebody and you know them and you've taken the time to understand who they are and really see them, that turns into being able to sense what their values are and how they would respond to XYZ situation, and being able to anticipate that. That is a really solid relationship and friendship. It's when people are there for each other in the way that that person would want them to be there for them, because everybody doesn't need that to look the same. So for some women, a guy who's a little bit more distant and removed, that kind of support might work for them. This sort of stoic, but he knows Jane. And I love that in the note he leaves, he writes something like, I speak sad Jane. That is really important. It's so easy to be like, I'm going to, hold you and say there while you cry. And that's me being there for you. Is it for this person, or is being there for them something else? Some people, they don't need you to sit with them while they cry. They need you to do the grocery shopping this week so that they don't have to think about it. That's you being there for them. It's in a practical way. You know what I mean? Some people need you to text like every few hours and just be like, hey, thinking about you, how you doing? And just let you know that whatever you're in the midst of doing, they're on your mind. And that's something that it's not like I don't think Rafael is capable of, but I just feel like I see it so much more with Michael than I tend to with Rafael. With Rafael, it's a much more theoretical thing, like building that, making the whole child-proof and child-friendly area in the suite. It's lovely and it's thoughtful in as much as, yeah, this is your child too. So I don't feel like this should be for Jane. I feel like you should just be doing this as a father because you want to have the supplies you need to take care of your child. So I have a hard time giving him points for it when it's like, you're just showing up and doing the thing you should do. And probably just ordered all this stuff and had somebody else put it all together. It's just hard for me to give him credit. And I want to see, if I'm meant to think that the two of them really should be together, I want to see more from him than the minimum of what I would expect somebody who actually cares about their kid and the mother of their child to do. So the overall thing this episode, we have like the start of the episode is a flashback, but it's a flashback to Alba. And I just loved this. I'm always delighted with the people that they cast in this show for the younger versions of these characters, because they do really, really well. And this is another one where she is really structured in the face in a way that you can see shadows of Alba and what she would look like as an older woman. It's really, really believable. But she still bears enough of a resemblance to Shamara and Jane that you can see the relation there. And it's a really tricky thing to manage with casting. And I'm always just so impressed with how good this show is at it. Sorry, Stacy's in the chat. Michael's and I was out and I saw this thing and I thought of you, so I got it. Rafael is the big, splashy, emotionless gesture guy. Yeah, and it's almost like Rafael is so, like, he was brought up in an environment that was so splashy and emotionless that I don't know what he's fully capable of. And those are the moments where I have liked him the best. If you think back to the instances that have made me stop and go, oh God, there he is. He's gorgeous. They're always the moments where we get to see him be passionate about something. When he tells Jane he loves her, when he's laughing about something specifically, like, those are all moments where I'm like, oh, there it is. But he is so rarely allowed to be more than just sort of serious and focused that he's kind of shallow feeling as a character for me. So, yeah, I think that's... It makes sense that that's when I have been the most drawn to him, because passion speaks to me. As anybody can tell, listening to any of my shows or reading any of my Facebook updates, I'm a really passionate person. I care about things a lot, and it, to a degree, might not always be healthy how much I care, but it's just the way that I am, and I try to be mature and an adult about it, but there's a part of me that feels like if you don't care a lot about things, what's the point? So that's what I want to see from other people, is the things that they like really care about that make them light up. And it's really one of those that I've been working on a lot, especially in the past few months, because I suddenly realized how much I have lost track of the things that really bring me joy and make me passionate. And that there used to be stuff I did all the time, like dancing or painting or writing. And I got to a point in my life where I had just been doing none of that and only getting by with doing the bare minimum to keep myself alive and survive. And that's just not enough. When, like, we all go through periods where you just have to scrape by with the bare minimum to get through it. And that's valid. But you have to scrape your way back to caring about more than the bare minimum, or ultimately nothing is really going to be meaningful for you. And that's no way to live either. So anyway, okay. So this scene with Alba, she is with Mateo, Alba's husband and one true love. It's so sweet. He, like, the way he looks at her, this guy is very convincing as her husband. And he's asking her why she's down, because she's going through their baby stuff, but she doesn't look happy. And she says, it's all so new. My mother was saving things for me, but they're all back in Venezuela with her. And I don't think that it has been mentioned. You know what? I say this, it probably has. But I don't recall the mention specifically of Venezuela. So now I have that in my head, like specifically where they are meant to be from. So that's cool, because I had just been going Mexican. I didn't really like think about it. And if it's been mentioned before and I just missed it, please forgive me, everybody. There's a lot to keep track of. But I just really find it helpful to get the specific information about where she's from. But yeah, he says, so let's start our own traditions. And she says, like, what? And he says, write about why we came here, all the things we wanted for Shamara. We're doing this for her. And then we jump ahead to a 16-year-old snotty-faced Shamara who doesn't want to do the baptism thing because she says she doesn't even think she believes in God. I love Alba. And she's saying, baptism is part of our family and our faith. And she hands her what she wrote. I wrote it to read at your baptism, and now you can read it at Jane's. And Shamara starts reading it, and she's definitely got like an attitude as she's reading it, but then she starts to get really, really emotional, and she like puts a hand over her heart, and later on when Jane starts reading it, she does the same thing. And it's just about like, I want all of the best things in life for you, and for you to get to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be alive, and the joys and sorrows, and for you to be strong and brave. And it's really, really sweet. And, you know, I feel like this is the sort of thing that as you get older, you just come to appreciate so much more, because you really start to understand your own mortality and the mortality of those around you in a way that it's hard to grasp when you're young. So the importance of these sorts of rituals, and the sense of like the person who is giving this to you maybe won't be there soon, you know, and how much more urgency your life begins to take on as you get older, because you really start to realize not only will you not be here forever, but you've taken for granted you've got all this time with all these other people, and maybe they won't be here forever either. And that can be true even when they are young. Like, if things happen, and even people who are your age or younger than you, shit goes left sometimes, and you don't know whether you have as much time as you think you do to get things in order and do stuff together. So these sorts of like words that are handed down that are meaningful and that were written in a period of like upheaval and uncertainty, but also great love. It's just really, really sweet. I really liked this aspect of this. Oh yeah. Stacy says that I'll be next to you cheering you on line got me. And of course, Jane's acting is so good. Like, she's crying through this as she's reading it. And I really, really loved it. Like, she was so convincing that there was a part of me that was like, is this something that her mom wrote her? Like, this just feels like it's connecting with her so hard. But yeah, this baptism, it's a big deal. This is something that I believe I was baptized, but I don't think that we had like a whole thing, like a big party. Mostly because if I were baptized, it would have been at my father's request, not because my father was a born-again Christian. That didn't happen until later, but he was raised Catholic, and my mother's family wasn't. And most of my dad's family didn't move to the U.S. until I was 8 years old, was when they really started to come up here. So there wouldn't have been many people to come to this kind of party and like be engaged with it. So if I think I was baptized, but I believe that it was like a really simple, small thing. But I am like, it's such an odd, I understand on the one hand, the significance of it and the reason that people want this. And then there's another part of me that always finds it so creepy. There's just a lot about having children that ultimately is kind of creepy. And every time the creepiness basically comes down to, we just put a lot on kids. You know, we just decide a lot about what kids should and shouldn't be interested in, what they are and aren't going to be like based solely on what their genitals are. Like, it's just there's always a push and pull between, is this like a reasonable expectation that's good natured and means well, or is this you just sort of like deciding something for a being that isn't consenting and doesn't know enough to be good with this decision? And ultimately, when it comes down to it, baptism is harmless. It's just water on the kid's head, you know? So it's not like they're doing anything versus something like circumcision, which is a different and much more debatable situation. But I just think about it and how big a deal the baptism can be, like, with them, and what an event it is. And, you know, someday this kid may like hear about the baptism being such a momentous occasion and just be like, really? You know, it's not a birthday. It's not a celebration of birth. It's a wholly separate and very specific thing that requires a type of belief that they may not share at all. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because I've been bouncing all over the place, which is fine. But let's just talk about Jane getting accepted into the graduate writing program. So you guys, anybody out there with kids watching this, what is your feeling on this? Because basically the energy of this whole thing is Jane decided she wanted a certain thing for her future. It's working out, but Mateo is only 3 weeks old and she is very hesitant to leave him. And she has to like literally leave him, which I didn't fully grasp right away. But the deal is that it's like an intensive writing sort of retreat so that she would have to go there for it, right? And sort of stay away from, like, I'm guessing in a dorm. I'm not totally sure that's correct, but I kept thinking about this and how I don't know what I would feel and what I would want to do. I really admire that she's going for it. I don't think it's the wrong decision. Neither decision felt right or wrong. Her mother tells her, remember that time that we spoke and you told me that you wanted me to tell you when it seemed like you were letting motherhood ruin your dreams or get in the way of your dreams or whatever it was. And this is one of those times. And it's the kind of thing where I'm like, practically speaking, that is literally the case. She is correct. You know what I'm saying? However, the kid's only 3 weeks old. And that is so quick to be jumping into something, you know, like she hasn't even gotten a full month with this child. I don't know. I felt like if I were in Jane's shoes, I don't think I would be able to do it. But I really, really loved a scene later on because she's going to this class and I guess it's just sort of like learning to communicate with your child and like the basics of very, very bare minimum education. I don't like education feels like too formal a word for what it is that they're doing, but she is trying to get her son to blink and he isn't, along with the rest of his classmates. Like, they are doing it and he isn't. And she's getting kind of frustrated because she is an overachiever and she just can't help herself. But she eventually gets the blink. And it's a huge deal. She's so excited about that. And when she's talking to her mom and grandmother later, she tells them that she turned down the graduate program because if she had been away, she would have missed that. And her mother tells her, and I love this so much, guys. Her mother tells her he blinked days ago. And ultimately it's her and Alba telling Jane, oh yeah, and I missed your first steps. Like, Shamara tells Jane, I missed your first steps. Alba says, I was there for your first steps, but I missed your mother's first steps. And basically what it comes down to is you are going to miss things. I really love this so much because I am so very like Jane in that I get extremely caught up in a perfectionist mindset, wanting to be there for literally every event of every kind. And I have an image in my head of how it should go, that it's not only a specific image that if it doesn't go exactly that way, I might be disappointed, but it's a requirement to the degree of like, if it doesn't go this way, I have failed somehow. Like, that is me being irresponsible, or, do you know what I mean? Like, take your pick. And I need the reminder, it doesn't matter how intensely you plan ahead. Things happen that are completely out of your control. And even if they do happen and things don't go to plan, it doesn't matter. Shamara says, I missed your steps. Alba missed my steps. Do you think that makes either of us less of a good mom? And I just love it being broken down like that, because that's the ultimate lesson that I need to learn as a person, is how to let go of the concept of being able to do things perfectly. I still have a mental image in my mind of the kind of person I would like to be, and that person does every good, healthy thing totally consistently, without fail, every day. That person doesn't exist. And I still, in my head, think they do exist. I think there are people out there that live that way, and I just want to be like them. And I need to be slapped and told they don't exist. There are people who maybe make healthful choices often. Nobody does it right all the time. And the concept of even there being a, quote, right way is problematic as well. There are some things to prioritize, and there are some things that in the end don't really matter that much, you know? Like the blinking thing. She got to be there and feels really excited because she got to see it. Turns out it had been going on and she didn't know. Why? Because she can't be around all the fucking time. And her mother didn't tell her because she knew maybe Jane would be disappointed, which she was. But it was a really great reminder and a good lesson. And it's something that I have been recently extremely conscious of with my own behaviors, and trying so hard to, like, even with writing again, I have gotten so much writing done this month compared to the past few months. And I still had a moment yesterday where I was mad because I haven't written every day like I said I would. It didn't matter that, like, I didn't start until the 9th, and that bums me out. I've only written 5,000 words, and that bums me out. How many words did you write literally the entire rest of the year, Natasha? Like, can you not take some progress and forward movement over nothing? Does it count for absolutely nothing? Like, that's not fair to you, and it's not reasonable, and you wouldn't hold anybody else to that standard. I wouldn't. But I do it with me because, in truth, it comes down to a sort of arrogance. Like, oh, I wouldn't hold other people to that standard, but they're not me, and, like, I'm kind of special and better than them. So I could do it. I know I should be able to do it. So, like, no, I wouldn't demand that of another person, but, like, come on. I mean, I'm definitely, like, more capable of doing the thing than they are. So I'm just being fair. Like, do you hear yourself? Like, it's a fucked up place to be coming from. So anyway, I just really, really liked this. And it was just a moment of me kind of stopping and being like, maybe my hesitance to go on this sort of retreat and do what I was, like, ultimately hoping to do is a manifestation of me having the same mindset as Jane and being really hesitant to miss anything and feeling like that speaks to me as a mother and being like abandoning my child in what feels like a selfish way. It's not, but it's something that women have been programmed to believe. If you have a child, that child should come first always in all things, or else you are being a selfish cunt. And I want to think that I am impervious to that kind of programming, and I'm just not. That kind of programming is done from such a young age. It just seeps in and it's hard to shake. So Jane decides to go for the program, and there's like a sort of comedy of errors where she is attempting to do the program and bring Matteo. And there is this excruciating scene, you guys, where Matteo starts crying and she goes to grab him and everybody's looking at her and she's trying to, like, find his pacifier. And then she kicks the what do you call it? I keep wanting to say cradle, the stroller, and it goes rolling all the way down the stairs of this, like, amphitheater style classroom and hits the lectern that the professor was standing at. Guys, this was so embarrassing. Like, there are times in the show when an embarrassing thing happens, but the surrounding circumstances feel so cartoonish in a way, or the other characters feel so cartoonish that the embarrassment isn't what it would have been. For example, anything to do with, like, when she was working at that school, because the nuns felt very, like, over the top silly, and they were doing something that was kind of, like, shady, I guess. So anything embarrassing that happened around the nuns, I started to sort of be like, it's fine. I'm not as embarrassed as I would be. But this scene in the classroom, like, there's not a soul in this scene that we have met before. Everybody here is a stranger, and everybody is playing a very straight character. Like, they are not laughing along with her. They aren't being goofy. It really feels like she is in a classroom with people who are focused and trying to learn, and she's disrupting shit and just making it shitty for everybody. And it was awful. And my instinct, as soon as Matteo started crying, was like, girl, take the stroller out in the hall. Leave. You don't stay there and try and find a way to calm him down and stay in the room. You have got to take it. This is my policy as well. If you bring your child to a movie and your kid starts acting up, you don't discipline and deal with the child in the theater. And I say this as somebody who has sat next to kids being yelled at many times. It is awful. Don't do it. I understand that kids aren't perfect all the time. That's fine. But please bring them outside where you can have a conversation with them and you don't disturb literally everybody else in the room. We all paid to be here, you know? So anyway, she tries that, and then because of this thing with the blinking, she turns down the position and she has to call in order to get it back. And she leaves like 12 voicemails until his mailbox is full. And I was sort of like, if she doesn't get her spot, if they decide that they're going to go a different way where she doesn't get it, I will never stop laughing, because that is a very real threat. He tells her, let me know, because there are other people who would like your spot. So I kind of thought maybe she turned it down and she's not hearing from them. They've been taking other applications or interviews or something, you know, but she gets it back. And I really ultimately was glad for her. I realized I'm saying ultimately like a lot lately. I need to chill on that word. Okay, let's talk about the whole thing with Petra. I pretty much covered. Let's talk about Luisa, because she gets abducted. And of course, last episode, I assumed this was Rose who was orchestrating this. And it seems now that it was not. It's so strange. Luisa is being kept in what looks like it's not even a closet. Like there's doors on it, but it feels like somebody's just put some cinder blocks in a certain area of their basement and put a door in there. And it's just this makeshift sort of energy. And it's so funny the way that this is done, you guys, because she, first of all, assumes that Rafael is going to have just sent the SWAT team, is the wording that she uses. When we are with Rafael, he thinks she's just run off again because she's flaky. So as soon as she stops showing up to stuff, he's just like, God damn it, Luisa. And then the only thing that sort of makes him go, oh, wait, maybe this is more serious, is the fact that she didn't come to the baptism. And that is the one thing that he seems to have called and had more of a tone of genuine worry. But the two guys who are like dealing with her, there's one who's always in the room with her, and this is like a bald guy. And then there's another guy who has dark hair, I think. And they are talking to each other in front of her and speaking German. And the only thing that she knows how to say is, I'm not interested in you, but I'll have sex with your wife. And she keeps saying it in more and more desperate tone of voice. I'll have sex with your wife. I'll have sex with your wife. Oh my God, you guys, I was cracking up so bad. It was so stupid. And you can't the dudes don't seem to know how to react to this, you know? So eventually she's slipped her bonds and about to sneak out of there. And this guy wakes up just in time to catch her, grabs her and puts her back in the chair, but he's surprisingly gentle. And she goes, oh my God, you're under orders not to hurt me. And then she starts to wonder maybe if it's Rose, because who else would care, but also be a lunatic and kidnap her, which is a completely reasonable assumption. And I think all of us were under that same impression. But then she keeps pushing it. She's like, I wanted that water room temperature at one point. Oh my God. So she's pushing it because she's assuming that she has Rose's protection. But then we hear these guys say, we stole her 48 hours ago and Rose hasn't even noticed, I think was the wording. And she hears the word Rose and thinks this is a confirmation of her suspicion. But she's so busy gloating over the fact that they would never hurt her. And one of these guys gets fed up and wings her in the shin with what looks sort of like a bully club or a nightstick or something. And that's sort of where we leave things with Luisa, is just the information. It's not Rose that ordered her kidnapping, so that we still don't know exactly what it is that is going on there. And then we have this thing going with Rogelio. So his ex-wife, I can't remember her name because he never wants to say it. So I tune it out in honor of him. But their Make Love Week is coming up for telenovelas. I did not know this was a thing. It sounds fake, but it sounds fake in the way that I believe it's real, because some things just have bad names. And they want to bring his ex on because they know it will make ratings go through the roof. And I am assuming part of that is the fact that they were together. Like, that's the point of doing this, is that everybody knows that Hollywood gossip and would be really excited to see this couple reconnect on screen that we know was together in real life, you know? And it turns out he's got like a storage locker that he has all this stuff that used to be hers, and like diary entries he wrote about her over and over, talking about how she crushed his heart like a walnut in a walnut crushing machine. Shamara is trying to help him through this. She recognizes that it would be good for their relationship for him to like move through this pain and learn to be able to say her name again. And then Shamara sees the two of them on screen, and the passion there is very real, and she is uncomfortable. And she literally runs away and like goes to her mom and is like, well, whatever, if he wants to be with her, then fine. And her mom is like, would you fucking knock it off? You always do this when you're threatened. You have got to get over it and work through this. Well, Rogelio, because he loves Shamara and cares about her and wants to do what's right, understands that this is a powder keg and tells her, I said that I didn't want to have her on the show. After all, we're going to go with somebody else. I will have chemistry with literally anybody. So we're not doing it. But when his ex hears about this, she comes to the set and she shows him something on video that she says if he does not give her this part, she will leak. And I am desperate to know what it is. I have to assume, because it's Rogelio, it's something really, really stupid. I am thinking, is it maybe him like during a period where he was out of shape? Or before he had gotten a nose job? So, you know, something very like vain. There's a great sequence where he's getting a spray tan and he like tricks Michael into getting a spray tan by having this person spritz Michael in the face. It was so good, you guys. The guy tells Rogelio to please turn and lift your cheeks. If you've never gotten a spray tan like that, is like so undignified. I did this before my first wedding and never again. I just couldn't. But anyway, I have to assume that whatever this video is silly. Like, it's not actually him robbing a bank or having an illicit affair or anything that's like actually scandalous. It's just something that would cause him to be a little bit of a joke, and he can't handle that. I just can't wait to find out what it is. I'm wondering if he like, you know, had a stint where he like performed for children's parties, just something like embarrassing like that from his early days, you know? I'm really, really excited. So anyway, that's how the episode ends. Stacey says, poor Michael, no one needed to see that. Oh my, and his constant, like, you have to get a spray tan, Michael. You really need it. You're very, very pale. I was just like, look, that's just what Michael should look like. Like, I don't see him being able to pull off a spray tan. I feel like he'll look really weird. There are some white people that can get a spray tan and it's fine. And then there are some people that get a spray tan and you're like, you're meant to be white. What is this? Like, you just see it's wrong, you know? Anyway, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. And thank you, Claire, for commissioning this. Appreciate you a lot. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.